at Dev2 Next in very sunny, again, you see all the sun here, Colorado Springs, Colorado. And we are starting our third day of the conference, and this is why you see us live and all the TaxCare social media channels, and that's a great stage for some of it. Oh, now everything is live. Okay, then we had technical issues, but now everything is live, and as I mentioned, verbose mode, Dev2 Next Colorado. Brian Vermeer was me as our first guest of the day, and I'm very excited about this particular interview because what you're doing is very dear to my heart and to what we are doing in TaxCare, and that's obviously security for Java developers and for other developers as well. But here at Dev2 Next is a lot of Java developers, just because how the community grew up with Venkat and everybody else. And you mentioned that you delivered the talk about securing your applications.
Yep, I delivered a talk about securing your Java applications in particular. And if you talk about the security to developers, the only thing, or the first thing that they have in mind is their own code, the code that they put on their Git repository and that they worked on. And most developers, I say most developers, have a clear cut and take care of their code with code reviews and that kind of stuff.
Which obviously makes sense, and it's also pretty easy, particularly in Java, because we don't have a lot of issues that other languages, special native ones like C and C++ has with buffer overflows and what's not. So taking care of Java code is not that hard.
No, but
it's basically validation of parameters, stuff like preventing SQL injections with using parameters instead of hard coding SQL stuff. So it's pretty basic stuff.
It's pretty basic stuff, and we take care of that. But if you realize that the code that you create is only 10 to 20% of the binary that you put into production, then you take it into another level, as in, okay, we take good care of that, but what about the rest? And I think that is one of the particular points that people need to see, because we take good pride into the of the code that we created, but that is just, let's say, 10% of the complete Java binary that you put into production, and I'm not even talking about the
operating system
or Kubernetes cluster or whatever goes wrong over there, because there's so many layers, and in the end, it's all part of your repository. So as a development team, doing DevOps, doing DevSecOps, or whatever name you call it, your team is responsible in the end. It comes back to your team. If something goes wrong, or something there's a bug or whatever, or there's a security issue, it comes back to your team. So you need to at least be aware of all these different layers that you need to secure.
So what do? Obviously, if it's your code, you go and fix the code.
Sure.
But we're talking about dependencies, and we're talking about transitive dependencies and layers upon layers of dependencies. And in the end of the day, you use what you use. Like you use great libraries and applications like Spring and Spring Boot and Quarkus and et cetera, and they use their own dependencies, and you don't really have the control over that code. So first of all, how do you know that you have a problem? And second, what do you do with that?
True. You don't have complete control, but you do have more control than you think. Yes, you have, for instance, you're taking a great frame, you're building your stuff onto Spring Boot or Quarkus, it doesn't matter. So you start with the starters that you need, you put that in your manifest file. But most people just keep it to that and have no clue what's underneath it. Well, first of all, you can scan that. Obviously, Sneak, the company I work for, has scanners to see like what kind of transitive dependencies are there, and are there any particular problems with, for instance, these transitive dependencies. And if a transitive dependency has a security issue, how can you solve it? Either is it just updating the top level one, so is it already solved in a newer version? Or do you need to do some more work and maybe just switch the newer version of that transitive dependency? Which means, as a developer, you need to know more than just how to put stuff into your manifest file. Also, like if you use dependency management in Maven, you can particularly say, like, or Grail has similar things, like I want to switch out this version of this transitive dependency for this version. Mostly, in most of the cases, it's a bug fix version or a minor update. And then obviously you need to have tests in place to make sure that everything works.
That's what I wanted to ask you.
But it's the whole thing. Like, even if you have this available and say one of your transitive dependencies, let's call a logging library from some logging library from 2021,
yes,
you know.
Yes.
But if you have that, then you have not only the fact that you need to know. First of all, you need to know.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
So you need to scan whatever is both in production or what you're working on.
Exactly.
So you need to monitor that. But secondly, you need to be able to know where it's used. So you need to pinpoint it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to be able to fix it, as in, is it just updating the major version of your framework? Maybe that's the case. If not, you need to update the specific transitive dependency, which is possible in most build tools. But then you also need to be able to release it right away, because what the problem was and still is that people can pinpoint it, but they cannot just release it because their release cycle is from a legacy application, and it takes like, I'm just exaggerating now, like 12 days before the CI pipeline runs. But the time to mitigate nowadays is next to zero, because people will start attacking right away whenever such a vulnerability is disclosed.
Absolutely. So that's like it's a three parts process,
Mm-hmm.
right? First, you need to know that you have a problem as quick as possible. The second, you need to fix it as quick as possible.
Yep.
And third is you need to release it as quick as possible.
Exactly.
But even the fixing part, which for transitive dependencies won't involve like fixing the code, because it's not your code, you don't know it,
Nope.
and you don't want to get there, still might be very problematic. So yes, we mentioned that, okay, probably some update is involved.
Mm-hmm.
You either update to a patched version, or you update your transitive dependency to a patched version of this transitive dependency. But this also, this process that looks pretty naive and simple, also has a lot of caveats in it. For example, upgrading a transitive dependency of a library you do not control.
Yep.
And the update, the next version might not be compatible. You probably don't know about it. And even if it's claimed to be a minor version or even a security patch, it still can break something in the library that you won't even know, because you're not in control of the code and you're not in control of the tests.
True.
So yeah. So this is something very, very risky to do.
It is very risky to do, but I think in most cases, what you see with legacy applications is that the frameworks are already outdated. There are already newer versions of the major frameworks. So what I normally suggest to our clients, but also to end users that ask me, like, okay, how do I start? I have this legacy application that's running, and we know there are a bunch of vulnerabilities in it, but how do I fix it? Well, first make sure that you're on the most recent stable version of Quarkus or Spring Boot.
But even that, much easier said than done, especially for legacy applications.
True, but still, that means that gives more reason that you need to maintain these applications on a more, how do you say it, a more recent basis, as in not just it runs in production, nobody touches it, and it can. If you do that with your car or with your property, with your house, it's deteriorating, and the value of it is getting down, and we all know that. But that means you need to do these updates on a regular basis on an application, even if the application doesn't have any problems. And that mindset is something that people forget, because we did it, but we're done with this project. It's in production. It works. There are people there. No, you need to, because guess what? If you're like 4 major versions behind on a major framework, and then something happens, that means you need to update all the stuff. But it means the libraries that connect with your framework or connect with your other libraries, you need to update as well, because APIs change. But if you take say once a month, or even as a newer version comes up, you update already. That means that the delta between the newer version and the version that you have is obviously smaller,
of course,
so less work. Because what happens if say I'm a library, or you're a library maintainer, and somebody points out to you like, hey, you have a vulnerability over here, it's legit, and you're like, okay, sure. You release a new version,
Yep.
but that's, if you're on 2.5, it will be 2.5.1 or 2.6 maybe. And maybe if you have time, and that's the thing, if you have time, because most components are open source components. So we depend on people that do this in their free time. Guess what? In their free time. So the first thing that they do is update the newer version. But if you are already in your enterprise level application, you're already 6 versions behind, you have to run and you have to do a ton of work to make it safe again. So that means you can already skip a part of that by making sure that your application, even though it doesn't have any problems, gets updated to newer versions of your libraries and frameworks that you're using, and be aware of that these libraries and frameworks are still maintained.
So this is obviously the best case scenario. It's
Sure.
a best case scenario when you have resources for that, when your management understands that,
Yep.
and basically you put these good hygiene principles to
Yep.
work. Now, unfortunately, in the real world, this is not always the case.
Yep.
And even with your analogy with the car or a house, I love that. And it also kind of, it's a good analogy because in the end of the day, there are just good old cars. Yes, you need to run maintenance. You need to replace oil, right, and plugs and whatever. If it's an old car, it probably has some of those. But in the end of the day, even you won't recommend like, hey, you need to buy a new car every two years.
No, you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So in the end of the day, you might end up with older versions of applications, and legacy. It has a very negative connotation in software engineering, but it actually has a good connotation in the outside of software engineering work. Legacy is something to be proud of. Legacy is something that worked for years, that brought money to the company, and still works, and you don't shut it down because it's obviously good. So legacy is not necessarily a bad word.
True.
And being able to upgrade all those libraries to the latest version is not always possible. And it's definitely something on everybody's mind, and this is why the modernization project is such a huge part of our reality. But in the end of the day, the benefit of doing this modernization is doing it correctly, doing it on the right time frame, planning for it accordingly, and even if our car needs a major rehaul, we will plan it. Because we need the car in the morning to go to work.
That's already the thing here. You plan it, but in how many, like say, engineering projects or software packages that are out there, it's just okay, it's done, and people leave it. And I think that is where the problems lie. As in, yes, you can still hold that older version, but you need to at least know what's going on, and if possible, you need to either fix it or maybe have a patch version for some of these libraries, or you have to maintain it yourself, or find somebody that can maintain it for you, which is not the core maintainer itself. So, I know, exactly. But that means you still have the obligation to do the necessary maintenance.
Absolutely.
And that is where the first problem lies. Like, oh no, this is in production. It's there in production for a decade.
Yep.
The team that created this is not with the company anymore. Nobody actually owns this, and nobody dares to touch it anymore. Don't touch it because it works.
Yeah. No, this is definitely cannot work. Especially, and you know what? Even if the functionality is there, and even if it's chugging along just fine, the security is where the paradigm. If it works, don't touch. It actually breaks.
Yeah.
Right, because the attackers specifically will target those legacy systems because they know they are untouched.
Well, let me show you that in the presentation that I gave yesterday, we saw that even after 3 years, I did that research in 2024, so last year, even after 3 years after the Log4j incident, which was major international news, there were still like a large percentage of customers that had vulnerable versions of Log4j in their applications, which means that either they didn't know, they didn't care, or they didn't know was not the case because this was based on research of our own customers. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if these applications are in production. That is one thing I don't know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they don't know. they are using our software, so they know.
supposed to know.
But then the case is like, where do they deploy it? What is the threat level? Sure, but
Let's break it down for a second. So what are the use cases of people not updating? There are people who honestly don't know, and obviously your customers is less. There is less chance of that because they have your software right in their faces, but some of them don't even know that software companies composition analysis tools exist for security scanning, and just live in a cage, never heard about it, maybe heard about it, don't know that they have Log4j in their applications at all, because some consultant wrote this application and left many years ago. They don't really know what's in it. So that's option one. And I guess those people, unless they kind of make themselves familiar with what's running on their servers, there is nothing we can do. The other is neglect. Yeah, we know, we heard about this Log4j. Yeah, we probably have it, but we're too small. No one touches us. We think that we are behind firewall, so we are protected. Right. So basically,
or like what could possibly happen? The data that we have.
Yeah, we don't have nothing to steal.
Is not important at all. These kind of.
Those people are also kind of they make their own bed basically, right? And then there are companies that have a real problem of being able to upgrade to the latest version. I'll give you an example. For example, they have a contract with some company, maybe they have a blue logo, maybe not, and they have a multi-year contract for running their application servers. Since Java 9, their application servers cannot possibly physically be updated or upgraded because the changes with modules and security in Java 9 make this software impossible to operate. So the last possible version of this application server will only be able to run on Java 8, period. There is no way around it. There is absolutely no way around it. The company might release a new product after Java 9, call it the same name, but it will
totally
actually be completely different.
Totally different product.
Right? So, and that means that this company is stuck. Maybe they want to upgrade, but they can't because it's millions of lines of code. It's a project that maybe doesn't necessarily need this upgrade because it just works. The only problem that they have, and it's a huge problem to solve, is the security one. So the question is, here comes Nix, and show them the dashboard. That, hey, you have those versions that are vulnerable. And the right way to fix it is upgrading to a major version. And they say, you know what? No, we cannot. We cannot upgrade to major version of Spring Boot 3 because it doesn't support Java 8. We cannot upgrade our Java because we're stuck with this application server. What do we do?
Well, then you have a couple of options, and then you come back to threat modeling. Basically, asking yourself, like, hey, what kind of risks do I have if I don't do anything? And if these risks are, and that's up to you, if these risks are something you want to take, because let's be honest, every risk you want to take, you can end up in how much money does this cost me? And if the investment costs you $1 million and the risk is like 10K, then you probably have an issue that like, okay, don't. So that is an option. But you have to be very, very much aware, because including that, you have to be aware of your brand name, your customers. If people afterwards, after something happens, still want to be with you, like that kind of stuff. The other thing is, you can always upgrade, which means it will cost you a lot of money, but you can always upgrade. So that's the other part of that threat modeling. How much does it cost you to upgrade to the newer product of that same company with a blue logo and go with newer software? What you also can do is look at the components, and then you need engineering power. Go with your engineers. You know where the problems are, and maybe you can either do it yourself, because most of this stuff is open source, so you can create a patch yourself. Maybe there is somebody that already created a patch for you.
Maybe
So,
someone
no,
like
maybe someone
penguins and stuff. I don't know.
No, but that is an option, and if that is available, use that. But if it's not available, you can also choose like if this package, the transitive depend in most cases is a transitive dependency that has problems. Maybe there's another way. Use another log library. Use another thing. But then it means you need to have engineering power that goes back and that knows about these older versions of how it works in Java 8, how it works with the older Spring versions or the older whatever versions, and you have to basically rebuild your stuff around that.
Exactly. So in the end of the day, we're talking about open source, right? The code is right there.
Yeah.
So you can theoretically take the code of the newer version that has the patch, open the code of the older version that have the vulnerability, read the code, and understand how you can make this fix that is done in the new version to the old version, right? It will probably cost you a lot.
It will. It will cost you a lot to deep dive, to actually do that.
I wish there were some people whose job that was, right? Who would do those patching for you, and then you would get the same login library already patched, the older version already patched as a patch. And maybe a security scanner that will show this an alternative. Either upgrade to Spring Boot 3 or use Spring Boot 2 with those patches.
That would definitely be
That would be
interesting.
nice.
But in the end, I do think like even though these patches are absolutely great for these kind of situations, you need to rethink your strategy as a company to say like, is this a thing that we
Permanent solution.
Permanent solution,
Yep.
or is this an intermediate solution?
Yep.
Because if you
Yep.
want to, if you know that this application needs to live for another decade, then you need to think about investing.
It's absolutely a temporary solution. It's absolutely a patch.
Yeah.
And this is why it's called a patch, right? It's a patch on a problem.
Yeah.
The real question is, okay, we realize that we applied this patch and now we are protected. And as a band-aid, this will work. But in the end of the day, the company needs to plan for being up to date, for using modern components, for upgrading, even though the application checking along just fine. The real benefit of those patches is planning this modernization on your terms, and not because of the CNN news of the next dumpster fire in Log4j.
Then we're back to the first discussion point. The planning of maintenance is crucial.
Exactly.
And if you don't have maintenance and you just do this, that's the same as a company that is still on Windows XP.
Yep.
And tries to buy from whatever company, buy support to keep it up and running, and that is not a feasible solution for
the long run.
For the long term.
Absolutely.
So yes, these patches are great for if it happens now, for fixing it right now and giving yourself time to do the modernization and do the upgrading. But in the end, you need to think of these strategies, and I think that in a lot of companies, this is not even, people aren't even close to that point like, oh, we need to maintain it as well. And we need to be aware of that this can happen. So I would say to everybody that is watching it, make sure you have some sort of playbook. If something happens, how should we, what are the options that we have? What are the limitations that we have? What are the sources that we can get patches from? And how do we make sure that our application, if it needs to be there for another year or maybe a decade, how do we plan modernization, and how do we keep it in such a loop that we can do that? So that is beyond the engineering part. It's more of the life cycle part that we need to take care of, because we can scan and we can point out where the problems are, but that is showing the symptoms and point out that there's a problem there. But it's up to every individual with their use case to find out what their long-term plan is and how to do that. And there are different solutions for different time frames. But you need to know and you need to be aware of that this can happen today, tomorrow, maybe next week, or maybe it already happened to you.
Yep, absolutely, definitely. And this is where the scanners come to help.
Yeah.
And this is where definitely solutions that can convert a dumpster fire to a planned, reasonable and calculated upgrades are so important.
Yeah.
Yep. And so yeah, legacy is not a bad word. Definitely respect the applications that survived so many years.
Yes, absolutely.
And just make sure to take good care of them. Be aware that you might have security issues even
Yep.
if the application is running, and then make sure that you are protected at all times and do the maintenance at your own terms, but don't neglect it.
And be aware of it during the complete life cycle. People will dare to scan it like at the point they are going to production. But when it's in production, you need to keep scanning it. You need to keep or you need to be aware of that, because if you neglect that, then it's like, oh, wait, it's already in production and this problem is already a week old or a month old and we have it.
This is a very, very interesting, I would say, a quirk of human perception.
Yeah.
Right? That while we write code, we pay attention to a lot of details because we are in the middle of changing stuff.
Yep.
And we are very aware of side effects, of multiple influences from different ways. But once we kind of consider it done,
Then we just drop it.
we have the perception that this is the state and nothing can change it.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. So monitoring whatever is running in production, and if these libraries are still valid and safe, is something you need to keep doing on, let's say, a daily basis almost.
Yeah, and this is where solutions like Sneak obviously help.
Absolutely.
Because they will monitor it continuously. You will get alerts, and then it's up to you to decide.
And then it's up to you to decide
with it.
how
Yep.
you want to continue. Do you want to continue with a patch and just keep it on rolling? And if that is good enough for you, absolutely. Or do you need to upgrade? But first is the attention that you need to know that something is wrong, and be aware of that. This needs to be a continuous process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is where like the combo of knowing what's going on, having immediate solution, and having a long-term plan.
Yeah.
I think those are the three components that
I
really
believe so.
matter.
I
Yep.
believe so.
Yep.
All right.
Brian, that was amazing, and thank you very much for coming for Verbose Mode by TaxCare at Dev2 Next. And you stay tuned for more episodes of. I don't know if they will be as good as this one. We'll definitely try, but yeah, stay tuned for more. We will be right back. Thank you.